intention is here is to give value however we can possible. I know that a lot of people who have thought about real estate investing, they've been interested in real estate investing. This is an opportunity for those people to really delve into it and try it out for themselves, even just the education portion, right? Of course, there is a lot of uncertainty right now, so people aren't quite sure what the best next steps are, but our intention with this is that if we're in isolation, if we're at home waiting anyway, then how about we work a little bit on our financial education? So at the time when things do clear up, because they will, just like every other crisis, there will be a time where things get better. And at that point, if you've ever been in a position where you wanted to do something a little bit better for your family's financial future, if you've wanted to plan a little bit more strategically, this is an opportunity for you to learn a little bit on the topic of real estate investing. So my name's Alex Powell. Today, what we're going to be talking about is the simple buy and hold. So when it comes to real estate investing, this is probably the simplest, easiest strategy that exists out there. And I think a lot of people do this anyway. And most strategies, whether it's a BRRRR or any sort of other similar type, turns into a simple buy and hold. It just determines it varies on what you've done beforehand to get to that buy and hold, because at the end of the day, in real estate, it's the long game. The long game is really where you make your money. There's opportunities, of course, in flipping, wholesaling, where you can make quick, easy cash, but the best returns, the most profitable things that we've done within real estate investing is holding onto our properties long term. So we're huge advocates of it. So 5 things we're going to be going through very quickly. First, education is key. What is the simple buy and hold? Types of returns. We're going to do an actual live example of a property that Kaylee and I have bought. And then in the end, we're going to talk very quickly about cash flow towns versus equity towns and how to make it work. Is if, depending on where you're investing, sometimes the strategy, you have to do things differently so you can balance it all out and make sure it makes sense for you guys. Okay? So first of all, education is key. I touched on that a little bit just a couple seconds ago. The importance of getting our financial education in place. It is very critical. And we all know that we cannot save our way to financial freedom. We cannot save our way to wealth. It just doesn't exist. So we can work our 9-to-5s all we want, but we all know what that rat race looks like. Every morning we wake up in the morning, we work, we pay our bills, and then we go back to work. And this cycle continues, and the only way that we can do this is by making our money work harder for us than we have to work. There's no simpler way to say it. We have to work on our day jobs. Kaylee and I still work. We have the luxury, however, now having done this, that the pressure of situations like, quite frankly, the one we're in right now, those pressures aren't as heavy on us because of the fact that we did things prior to really help our family in times of need. And so this is why we're encouraging you guys to really take a few moments, check out these examples that we're going to be doing over the next few days, and so that it makes a little bit of sense. And maybe you guys will get inspired, and when you guys get the confidence, of course, we're always available for questions and answers even offline. Trying to implement some of these strategies may make the world of a difference for you and your family, okay? So, what is the simple buy and hold? Frankly, there isn't any simpler way to put it than it is actually buying a property and holding it. And by holding it, we mean putting a tenant into that property, and the tenant's rent every single month is paying off all the expenses on that particular property, including the debt servicing. So there is some opinions on how much cash flow, what's the minimum, maximum we should buy. We're just going to talk high level for right now, and then I'll show you guys with an example once again, as I said. So the types of returns that we can get in a simple buy and hold, there's 3 main types of returns. So your first return is your cash on cash. Okay? So what the cash on cash return refers to is how much cash flow that you're making above and beyond your expenses and your debt servicing divided by how much you actually put into the property. This will make a lot more sense when we go through the example, as I said, but just remember, this is one of the 3 returns. Typically nowadays, with property values being as high as they have been, and with mortgage payments being a little bit higher, our cash on cash return is usually the lowest percentage out of all the three factors that we see. And that's normal, so that's okay. So nowadays we're seeing $100 a month cash flow, $200 a month cash flow. Those are actually starting to become the new norm. So just a heads up on that. So the second return is your mortgage paydown. So in a mortgage paydown scenario, we know that every single month when the tenant pays in their rent, we then have to pass that forward to the bank, right? We have to pay our mortgage. So the mortgage is made up of two factors. You have your principal and then you have your interest. Your principal pay down is paying off the amount that the mortgage has lent you. So as time goes by, your principal portion of your mortgage will actually increase, but it starts off pretty small and then it increases over time. And that's how the amortization schedule typically works. But that pay down, as small as it would be, after a year, you might have a couple $1,000s accumulated. Next year, a couple $100s more than what that original amount was added onto it, and so on and so forth. But that mortgage pay down can actually be calculated as a return on investment. It's very, very important, okay? And the third and final, and this is where a lot of us lately here in Southern Ontario have seen some massive gains, is appreciation, okay? So typically when we run our numbers, we're running at a historic average. So a historic average for us is 4% appreciation year over year. Now in Hamilton, for example, we've seen like some areas of Hamilton appreciate from one year to the other like 20%. It's actually been incredible. And if you've capitalized on those situations, then that's fantastic. But regardless of what those appreciations could be, we never want to project the best years. We always project the historical averages throughout the longest period of time that we've collected that data for. And so appreciation, we're always looking at about 4%. Okay? So those are the three main ways that a typical buy and hold will create a return. Now, there's other factors if you look into like depreciating the asset, for example, so you can save on taxes. There might be other strategies you can implement there. But for right now, simple buy and hold, these are your three. The one other one that's missing from other strategies that exist out there is forced appreciation. That's where you're doing some quick fixes to the property. If you're buying a property in a distress situation, and then you're fixing it up, and then you're putting tenants into it, that's an opportunity where you can make a fourth return, which is forcing the appreciation up and then having the tenants pay it off. Okay? We're going to be talking about that not tomorrow, but on Thursday for our BRRRR class that we're going to be doing, okay? So, I'm going to run through an actual example of a simple buy and hold that Kaylee and I bought 3 years ago. Now, I've actually written down the figures here just so you guys can follow along. We actually bought a very tiny, compressed 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom property in Niagara Falls. And this we bought in 2017, in May, okay? So, height of the market, a little bit of a crazy time. Everybody's saying, you're nuts, don't buy right now. We say, you know what, screw it. We found an interesting property. It actually went to multiple offers, like everything did at that time. So, we ended up buying this property for $160,000. So, this is purchase price. We bought it for $167,000. Okay? So, that purchase price, when we are considering, like, Kaylee and I didn't have $167,000. Like, we can just... That's James. He was telling us not to at the same time, but that's okay. So our purchase price was $167,000. Remember, we have to leverage the bank, so we have to get a mortgage that's worth 80% of this whole amount. So our down payment was equal to $33,400. Okay, so that down payment is 20% of this value. All right, that means that our first mortgage, which we actually got through RMG Bank, was $133,600. Okay? So this is the amount of debt that we now have to service. This is our debt. Here, the down payment amount, this is what's going to be the factor in how we calculate our return. Because remember, the goal with real estate investing is other people's money. You have to leverage the bank. You have to leverage the bank so you can get a better return. That's how the whole thing plays out. The banks love it too, because They know that we pay consistently. That's all it is. So what has to happen here is now we're going to go through what the expenses are and what the profit was. So when we bought this property, we figured that at that time in the market for a detached 2-bedroom, 1-bath property that had a nice little yard, parking, nice area, that was going to bring us rent of about $1,400 a month. Now, this would also be all-inclusive. So that means we're not going to pay hydro, we're not going to pay water, we're not going to pay gas. So those are all things the tenant is going to be responsible for, okay? So going through the expenses quickly. So this is your income. I'm just going to put an I there. Expenses. So we have our property taxes. So our property taxes on this were $137. Now we have insurance, which is $120. So heat, hydro, gas, as we know, is $0 because the tenants are paying that in this particular case. Now that could vary for other scenarios, and then you just have to make an estimate of what that cost could be. But then we also have property management. Because the property is out in Niagara Falls, at the end there, we, Kaylee and I didn't necessarily want to be the ones that were hands-on on the property all the time. So we partnered with a great property management company out there, and typically for a single-family type property, it's 8% of gross rents. So if we take the rent amount of $1,400 and we multiply it by 8%, then their fee every single month is going to be $112. Okay? That's what their fee is on top. And then we also always include a 2% maintenance and then a 3% vacancy. Now, once again, we know that vacancies right now in Southern Ontario are really, like, they're tiny. There's not a whole lot of vacancy. So that's okay. We're going to run that number anyway because we want to make sure that, you know, times aren't always this sweet. And if we're owning a property for a long time, which is the whole point of a buy and hold, then we need to take into consideration times such as the one we're in right now, right? So for a 2% vacancy, we are at $28, and 3% vacancy, we're at $42. So in total, our expenses are $439. Now, that's just the first part. It looks pretty sweet right now, but remember, we also have the first mortgage that we have to service. So $133,600, our principal and interest payments is equal to $665. Alright, so which means that our total, once we subtract the $1,400 minus the total here, our cash flow is equal to $295 per month. Okay? $295 per month isn't like something to write home to mom about. It's nothing like crazy, but just remember something is that when I illustrate to you those 3 types of returns that we can make off of a simple property like this, you'll be quite astounded to see how great the return really is. And that's the whole point, is that if there's this $33,400 that we have available that we can now plug into a property, and we can create those returns, that's the whole point. That's the whole ideology of making your money work for you. So that when we go to sleep, we know that the money's still working. And that's what's able to allow us to step away from our day-to-day jobs and focus on creating long-term wealth and creating legacy wealth for our family, for friends who are in need, those kind of things. Okay? So let's take all this information that's boiled down to $295 a month. Let's turn that into what do those returns look like. So remember what number 1 was. We had cash on cash. Our cash on cash return, if we take the $295 times 12 months, right, that equals $3,540. We take that $3,540 and we divide it by our initial amount. Because what's the return that we're getting on our initial investment? The return is $3,540 on the initial investment of $33,400, a tongue twister, And that return in itself is 10.59%. Okay? 10.59. It's not too shabby. Now the second, mortgage paydown. So if we look at our principal and interest, right here, we know that our principal interest payments were $665 every single month. Now that can be broken out into the two sections. You have your principal and you have your interest. Our principal amount is equal to 305, whereas our interest is 360. So this principal amount of $305, that gets chipped away every single month on this overall figure, the $133,600. It seems rather insignificant, but remember, the mortgage has a longevity of 25, 30 years in some cases, right? Sometimes even more, depending on what your mortgage is. So if we take the example of the 305 and we extrapolate it over 12 months, that equals 3,660, right? So once again, the same type of thing, 3,660 divided by what we originally put into the deal, which is our down payment. That's 33,400. That return is 10.95. Okay? So that's our second. Now our third, appreciation. Now, appreciation is the one element in real estate investing that is considered the largest gamble. Because remember, we have zero control over what happens in the market as individuals, right? So when we're buying properties just on appreciation, you have to remember you're buying based only on the gamble. And that's why when we buy properties, we buy on cash. We buy to make sure that we have some sort of return at least on our, like some sort of cash flow, so that the property at least carries itself month over month. I don't want to get into a situation where, property values drop considerably, but then at the same time, the property's not carrying itself. How many of those properties can you really sustain, right? So keep that in mind when you're buying. And a lot of people I know who are buying like new build condos, for example. You buy a new build condo for $500,000, and in Hamilton for a one-bedroom condo or a two-bedroom condo, let's say, you can only cash flow making rent only like, let's say $1,800, $2,000, right? So that property is not necessarily going to carry itself. So what you end up having to do is increase your down payment to make sure you're servicing less debt, and then your return is considerably smaller. In this particular example here for appreciation, so if we consider the modest 4%, which I'll get to what the actual returns were, but let's just say the returns here were 4%. That would mean that in 1 year's time, that we'd make, so if we took the 167,000, which is the total amount, and we're saying that we are appreciating by 4%, so there we go, times that by 0.04. This makes sense. So we're taking 4% of this original purchase amount, and we're adding it to what it was previously, which is going to show us the growth that it's had by 4%. That total amount is 6,680. Okay? That's in 1 year at 4% appreciation. So you take that 6,680, which is phantom income because it's tied into equity. So it's not necessarily that you can tap and put back in your pocket, but you know it's there, right? If we take that and divide it by that 33,400, that's where we get our return right now, which is actually a whopping 20%. So how we would calculate the total ROI of this type of property is that we take our cash-on-cash return, we take our mortgage pay-down return, and we take our appreciation return, and we combine them all together to get a total return on investment on a typical property. So here we have 10, which let's just say for round numbers is 20 plus 20. So this is a 40% ROI. Who here has made 40% ROI on their money? I'm staying in the room with Kaylee only, so I don't expect anyone to answer. But if you think about 40% return on investment is really, really good. If you consider the average mutual fund, the average, you know, wherever you guys decide to invest paper assets, it's very difficult to make that kind of a return year over year. And here's the beauty of it all. We didn't appreciate by 4%. Right now, we know that just by looking on the market today, there's comparable sales that have taken place that are $225,000, right? So if we can sell this property at $225,000, theoretically, then at an original purchase price of $167,000, our differential on that, I mean, you're looking at $58,000 difference, right? So at that delta of 58K, then what would we do is we plug that number, this number will have to be divided by 3, right? For 3 years, since we've all known this since 2017. But what I've calculated, if you guys want to try and do the math at home, for a 1-year return, if you just consider just the appreciation alone, it's 79.42%. 79.42% on just the appreciation, which is actually wild when you really think about it, right? So that's a very, very quick example. Now, once again, super straightforward, easy. This is a property that you buy, you go there, you maybe spend a couple $100 cleaning it up, that's it. But you put tenants into it, they take care of it, it just runs itself right away, okay? So the last thing I really want to go through is because a lot of people are probably thinking to themselves, okay, yeah, great, $167,000, where are we going to find $167,000 properties? Do they exist anymore? Remember one thing, 2017, it was crazy, crazy market. Everything was in multiples. People were saying, do not buy. And now, I'm illustrating like massive, massive returns, and we look like a genius? Hardly. It's not. It's that we took action. It's the only difference. We're not particularly smarter than anybody else. We just took action when others didn't. So in this kind of situation, if we're talking about cash flow towns versus equity towns, this is something to really consider. If you're looking to do a single family buy and hold in Oakville, Ontario, it's not really going to work, right? Well, it could work, but remember, you have to put a significantly larger down payment so that you're servicing less debt, hence your mortgage payment is going to be substantially less, and then you can carry the property. Otherwise, you're going to be in a negative cash flow situation, and it's just going to eat you alive after month of having to pay that out. So just think of it when you're looking at properties. The equity towns, those are the ones that have massive gains. Oakville's an equity town. Burlington, Mississauga. These are places where it's very difficult to cash flow on properties without having to up the amount that you're putting down. Equity towns, for example, cash flow towns, for example. Cash flow towns are areas where there's properties that still exist that you can do a buy and hold strategy. Once again, Southern Ontario, they're becoming few and far between. It's harder to really find those really, really good deals. But, for example, 2017, in Niagara Falls, we found one in multiple offers for $167,000, and all we had to do was buy it, put a tenant in, and let it run its course. So now we get to enjoy the benefits. And even James gets excited at that. So, this is in a nutshell the simple buy and hold process. So tomorrow, if you guys can join us, we're actually going to be transitioning to talk a little bit about the flip. All right, so I'm going to walk through a simple flip scenario, give you guys an example of what we've done on a simple flip. Any questions that you see right now? Okay, perfect. Check us out, www.palpropertysolutions.com. You guys can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. If you guys have questions that you don't want to maybe put on this video, you want to private message us, we help investors every single day. That's what we do. So our full-time jobs is helping other people build wealth for themselves and their families. And also, please check out our networking group, GHAIN, the Greater Hamilton Area Investors Network. We obviously don't just focus on Hamilton. We focus all over the place. But the point of the networking group is to bring people together so that we can all collaborate and we can all learn together, right? At times like these, if we have an opportunity to do something valuable, let's educate ourselves. Let's see how we can make the next step better so that in times of these kind of crises, we can really rally together and it doesn't hurt or affect us as much, okay? So, once again, any questions, anything that you guys want to comment on, let me know. My name's Alex Powell, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.